I'm going to start recording. We're going to do it live. I don't know. It's weird to switch from stream persona to YouTube persona. What do we got to be like? We got to be like, hello, friends. Welcome. There we go. Live opening. Okay. We're going to talk about the meta. I don't know how this video is going to end up. Might be long, might be short. We have chat here with us because this is live on stream. You guys should visit it. That way, as we talk about stuff, you guys can ask any questions. We can address it live. I'll see what this ends up being lengthwise. We can talk about however long it takes. I don't really have this well planned, and maybe we'll just bait a patch out, and this will be useful for all of one day. So anyways, what I got here, this is my little cheat sheet for when I cast. X-axis is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for positions. If they're near the line, it means they can flex. Sometimes I put them both, like Bristle's offlane and carry. And then top is like the best heroes that are often first phase picked banned at the pro level. Kind of drips down from there. Some of these towards the end, don't worry so much about what that means. These are just heroes that are picked enough, but not strictly in the meta. It's more based on what happens and people fall back to them. Some of these are just for me to keep in mind. Some of them are bad. We may or may not talk about every single one. We'll just start like in the top with the first bans. So Alchemist, super common to ban in the first phase. No one wants to play against him because it's Doom. Doom, here's how it's going to go. The team that is first pick is going to ban Doom. The response is going to be to ban Alchemist and then someone else of their choice, because this is the core counter is Doom. And if Doom's out of the pool, then the Alchemist is probably going to run free. You can try to stop him, but Alk is in a pretty good spot right now. And then there's tons of strong position 5s. So we got like Bat Rider, Phoenix, Enchantress or Chen you'll see picked up commonly to just make sure Alk has a good start. There's like many other strong 5s in here. Ogre, Crystal Maiden, like tons of them, right? So Alk just always has a good start. You can't block every single camp, and it's too miserable. Bristleback, you guys have all been like Bristlebacked before in your pubs. He just does what he does. Also a strong laner, also a flex. You can send him off lane or carry. We had a period where people were trying Bristleback support, like to flex it. It wasn't good with Snot Rocket. I think it has a very small window of working, and pros can maybe try it more, but I think they'll wait for a buff before doing it more. So also just really strong. Jupiter, actually, before we send him away, here's Jupiter, the noisy. Okay, maybe we can hold him here for the rest of the video. Can Bristle mid? Not really. I wouldn't really do it. There's too many good heroes that would stop Bristle, and he would be a very greedy mid who would do the exact same thing that the carry or the offlane would, but you would be stealing the triangle farm from one of them. So you'd be forcing your offlaner into another role or something. So it's kind of tricky to do Bristle mid. Bristle also doesn't fully dominate on his own. He wants help from the position 4, and then the position 4 to go stack and give him solo XP. So I think you don't really want a Bristle mid. So Bristle ends up being super strong. Sanj and Yasha, I'm going to talk about that later, but keep that in mind. A lot of these heroes really like Sanj and Yasha, but Sanj and Yasha is very good right now. So it goes along with many of the best heroes being natural Sanj and Yasha builders. Dragonite ends up being a really strong pick. You can put him mid, but he's mostly a carry nowadays. Everyone goes the red facet. And it's just super stable. He's like the strongest hero, like the strongest stable carry. Well, one of the strong, like these guys are all in that category, but whatever. He's up there, and you can't really bully him out, especially after Doom gets banned out, which you don't even fully care. Like if you get doomed, if your ult is going, you can just fight. You miss out on a ton of regen, sure, but you will still do a bunch of damage. So Dragonite fits a lot of early compositions and then still scales really well. And he's such a safe pick to grab early, especially once like some of these other ones are banned. So he's often banned out in the early phases or picked up. Magnus can play all 3 roles, carry, mid, and offlane, and you can put him in support. So it's just a lot. Not everyone plays him 4. And not every core player can play him. So it's a little bit hero specialist. Sometimes you see Magnus banned in the first phase if a team plays him, sometimes not. But it's really just, he is super stable. Same thing as Dragonite, right? Very sturdy, has natural cleave. You can't stop him from farming, but he also gets active really early. So offlane and mid usually go like Blink, BKB, Refresher type build. Sometimes the Ag, sometimes the Shard, stuff like that. It's very like spell casty, make plays happen. And then carry goes like Echo Saber, more right click type items. So just because it's so flexible and RP, you know, classic BKB piercing, stuff like that, the repositioning strong, he's banned out a bunch of times. Monkey King has some flex between carry and mid. Also, you can pick him early and he naturally counters a bunch of these heroes, right? Like any melee hero is favorable for Monkey King in the mid lane. You ban out a couple of the ranged mids and then you save it towards the end, right? It's like, oh, they picked a mid melee hero, put Monkey King there. They picked an offlane monkey melee hero, then put Monkey King there. You just get a lot of natural counters, and then they're forced into more range type heroes, which you might then move Monkey King out of that lane and then counter pick them. So a lot of people will just ban out Monkey King right now. Earth Spirit, I thought he would drop off after the bans, but he's still pretty good. Very stable, has to gank more than he used to, but that's usually why you're picking him, because he doesn't have a horrible mid matchup in most cases, outside of like, you know, being Huskard, things like that. Doesn't love Monkey King, but you can kick him away at least. And you end up under leveled, which really sucks for other mid heroes. Like Storm Spirit needs 6 before he can gank. So if you get Huskard, it sucks. But when you pick Earth Spirit early and you get like counter picked really hard, you only need level 4 or 5 before you can start rotating. So like he can still do what he needs to do, which is why he's been such a stable pick for a lot of teams. Invoker, I never get to see him, so I don't fully understand because he got nerfed a bit. I think where he's at is that he just has very safe matchups. His right click build is still pretty good. Alacrity is really good with a lot of these power heroes. I think he's just a super safe early mid pick, and you can't really counter it too hard, especially now that Puck used to be one of the better responses, but he got nerfed really heavily, so now Invoker's just like at the top. Why don't people pick up CM as much in the pro match? They do, especially in response to like Shen and Enchantress to deal with creeps. Oh, Crystal Maiden with Alchemist. Why does that happen? Because Crystal Maiden's a pretty strong 5. The pub opinion of Crystal Maiden's like, oh, she's just an aura bot. That's totally wrong. Crystal Maiden is actually a really strong position 5 who has good matchups versus like Bat Rider, who's one of the more popular position 4s. So that's part of why they grab Crystal Maiden. When you're playing Alchemist, you also want a really fast-paced draft, because Alchemist doesn't win ultra-late games. He wins by hitting his late game at 20 to 30 minutes. So you want your team to be able to make a bunch of space for Alchemist, and that's what Crystal Maiden is also good at, because her aura benefits her teammates, so they have less mana issues. He has less mana issues to keep up his farm, and while he's AFK jungling, you can go with your team, 3-4 people grouped up, just like run at objectives, stuff like that. So she fits the natural playstyle that Alchemist wants. Shaman will be picked by some teams, but there's too many ways. Like the Shackle is a big part of Shadow Shaman, right? And then just look at a lot of the other position 4s and 5s in this game. So you shackle someone, Deadshot comes out of nowhere. Terrorize comes out of nowhere. Like Bushwhack, Save, you know, walks up and stuns you. Blink lassos you. Sunrays your guy, your target. Comes and cancels you. Some of these guys don't, right? But there's just a lot of other popular supports that interrupt the channeling, so it's not the best right now. Why is an Undying stronger? I'm surprised we don't see more Undying. I think part of it is that he doesn't punish as hard as he used to, and many people have figured out how to deal with oppressive matchups like Undying, like creep dragging, stacking, all of that. You could always kind of do it, but people are really good about it now, and Undying is not as strong as he used to be. So the payoff for picking him doesn't seem as good, especially when several of the offlaners that you might punish have a lot of mobility. Or there's heroes like Bat Rider who will knock you back so you can't commit to the chase. I think that's why he's not been as popular, but I haven't really seen him, like, I don't see the scrims, you know, so I don't see them trying it and then why it doesn't work. I thought we would see more though. Okay, let's continue from Invoker real quick. So we talked about Magnus, why he's good. Doom is really good because he's strong versus all of these guys, as well as being the classic, what do you counter Doom with, right? Like at some point you devour things, you get gold, and then you ult things. It's always useful, always stable. Many of the top offlaners can play Doom very well. So he's still in the top bands. And if you don't, like, a lot of teams will just like grab him instantly. Beastmaster's really good because you got 2 different builds. So you could go Helm of the Dominator, and whatever facet helps give you more attack speed with creeps. I forget what it's called. That one, self-explanatory. You get the Helm of the Overlord. It's strong. You pick up the tempo. If that build is potentially bad for whatever reason, because they have like Chen, Enchantress, Doom, things that eat the creeps, whatever, then you go for the Aghanims, which you guys are familiar with. It's just a really strong timing, really powerful. Even after the nerfs, it's still good. You go do Roche. If your lane is countered, you just go stack a bunch, do creep dragging with the boars, all that stuff. So all these top picks are either OP or incredibly stable that you can reveal them early, and you'll try to make their life miserable, but like they'll probably get something out of it. So Batrider and Phoenix, currently we're mostly in a ban heavy core meta at the highest level. Some teams will prioritize certain supports, especially against certain players, but we are past the Naga Siren, Tusk, Shadow Demon era. Like every single game, they must be banned. They've all been nerfed enough. I would say Shadow Demon is still the best out of them. Naga got put really far down, especially because we used to have more ranged heroes in the meta, especially with like Gleipnirs, things like that. So she fit perfectly. Now there's a lot of melee carries you'll see at the top. And Naga doesn't help them as much. So Naga has dropped down a good amount, but you will sometimes still see her picked if you really need a song reset, or you know you're going to get a ranged carry, so then you get a Naga. That could still potentially work, but she's a lot worse than she used to be. Tusk has a lot worse early game as well. Drinking Buddy's got nerfed, so that's why he's a lot worse. Snowball save with Blink is still very good, and you still have some good power combos. You can roam earlier than others. So there's still times for Tusk, and certain teams like him more than others, but it's not as consistent as it used to be. Shadow Demon nerfed, but still pretty much does everything he used to. It's just a little bit worse, but still good enough, especially because as you look through this, there's a lot of cases where the ultimate is strong, especially if you eventually get the Aghanims for the break, or Disruption is really strong as a save. So for example, Roar target, Doom target, he RPs, and before he can skewer away, you like disrupt save. These guys all jump and try to kill you. You like save that guy. Or you have the cleanse from the shard going, and so like all the silence, the nasal goo, things like that, all just immediately removed. Some of the other top supports like Batrider and Phoenix, as the egg is about to pop or someone's lassoed, you can save them. There's just like tons of uses for it. These guys are at the top though because they are so safe. They are both really strong laners, and there's really not much that will stop them from being useful. They may not have as good of a game as they could have, but they'll always contribute something. Batrider in getting a blink to blink lasso, get active really early, or Phoenix, strong lane, healing with the Sunray, massive team fight with the ultimate, very flexible skill build. So they both just do so much, and they can both go position 4 or 5. So very safe opener or one of your early reveal picks. And, you know, what do you know? It's like, oh, they're going to have a strong support. Like, that's all I really know. And you can try to pick a hero that deals with it, but they will do what they need to pretty much no matter what. Do you think we'll see any junglers? Not in this current meta. The Veno jungling. So I didn't know where I was going to talk about that. I haven't really gotten to see in the pro meta. I know in some qualifiers, it's been run a little bit. I really haven't seen it since then, though. I really want to see it, but it's just very tricky, I think. I would love jungling and roaming to kind of come back for a phase instead of just 2-1-2 all the time. I don't think it's really worth doing right now. Veno is the best if you're going to do that, and I'd say it's similar to the Monkey King courier sniping. You need an offlaner who can be on his own. So like Primal Beast, maybe Tidehunter in the right matchups, those types of heroes. You could, like Enigma, like you can maybe do it, but it's just pretty tricky, I think, to get that. Wraith King's fine in pubs. You don't really see him too much in the pro scene. Same with Naga. Naga carry still works in pubs. It's not strong enough, not fast enough. A lot of illusion heroes aren't very popular right now at the pro level. Can't you counter Phoenix with Snap? Yes. So we can start dipping into this lower phase. So as a response to Phoenix, you will see things like who can kill the egg. So we got Snapfire, we have Marcy, we have Muerta, who sometimes double shots. You'll see those types of heroes who are good at killing the egg, but Marcy and Snapfire have been nerfed enough that they aren't common instant responses for a lot of teams. But certain teams who have, especially if a lot of supports have been banned out, or want something specific, for example, a lot of early team fight power with the ultimate, then Snapfire can be good. And then Marcy, certain players are just Marcy specialists and they're really good at it. So those are common Phoenix responses. Otherwise, you interrupt and prevent the egg at all. So things, again, like Muerta having the silence you accidentally dive into. Maybe you can't cancel your dive. Maybe you can't get the egg. Nyx Carapace prevents the stun, you chain stun combo, things like that. Potential terrorize, or as the Phoenix team is trying to fight around the egg, you terrorize everyone away, kill the egg, and go from there. The instant hex, hook shot into the egg, and you pop the battery assault and power cogs, and Phoenix might want to... Phoenix can egg, but it may not be in the position Phoenix wants to be in. Like, Phoenix usually dives into position and then eggs. And you can't get the successful dive against a Clockwork who's on top of you with those spells going. So you just have to egg wherever you are, and it maybe is not very good. Ogre, not the best, but he has Bloodlust at least to speed you up. You have instant Sinister Gaze. So a lot of these top picks are also good versus Phoenix, but not so good that Phoenix is not meta. Like, Phoenix is still good. Like, you just have to play around each other, but many of them have a way to deal with it. And it's part of the reason they're all up here. Let's talk about a couple of these top supports and then dip over here. So a lot of the first picks will be like one of these heroes up here or one of these supports. If you picked a core, then there's a very high chance you pick one of these supports to just kind of show something, but not too important. So like Muerta 4 is a very safe combo with many offlaners, whether you've picked your offlaner or not. And even if they can counter pick, you probably have something to do. Like Muerta can double stack very easily, and you can also fight it out. Like Muerta plus any of these popular offlaners, calling, Deadshot plus those spells, all going to be pretty good. Lion, flex him between 4 and 5, relatively safe, strong lane, useful throughout the game, get the blink, initiate. Clockwork, you guys have seen enough at this point, but he's still pretty good, very safe between 4 and 5. Ogre, learning curve, you got to play careful, and then very strong lane presence. Ignite, just very strong to secure many lanes, and then Bloodlust is really good with many popular heroes, so he's been very popular as a position 5. Lich, more people have been trying Lich. I don't think it has the best win rate, so I'm not sure if this, like, if it's gonna stay, but as part of there being a lot of heroes who like to right click with the Bloodlust, then that means Frost Shield is very good, and the innate makes his laning stage much better. The ultimate facet that holds the ult makes it way more playable at the pro level, although they are still relatively good at dealing with it. He's just been it's like, I need a strong laner who will contribute with his abilities. Like, that's Lich. Nyx, I'd say, is also pretty common as a position 4, but especially if the enemy has grabbed an early Enchantress or Chen. He's also really good at creep dragging and then just using Mana Flare on creeps. And because you're creep dragging, you're affecting equilibrium, so even if your matchup sucks, you do a lot. And then Scuttle is so good at finding something. And there's a lot of good combos with it. So for example, Invoker Sunstrike if Invoker slips through. Invoker Sunstrike is good. Monkey King could be following around. Very high mobile core heroes, blinks, rolls, things like that to follow up. Dawnbreaker ult. Some teams are running Spectre. You like trample over, things like that. There's a lot of things that are the follow-up to Nyx. And many offlaners who are pretty strong on their own and just need a little power from Nyx's stun or creep dragging. So for example, like stun into Skewer back. Primal Beast brings all the damage. Dawnbreaker, Bristle. Although maybe Dawn prefers a slightly stronger. It's good enough to work. Get through the lane, and then really good global combo later. For carries, a lot of people have been picking Morphling pretty early, because once you ban out some of these tempo heroes, Morphling's biggest issue is getting tempoed in the early game. He's one of the best late game scaling carries, and he's currently in a spot where he is good enough versus many cores that you can reveal him pretty early. Even though he has no flex now, like a couple teams will try position 4 morph. It's not great at the moment. Most just run the carry, and as long as you have banned out the best tempo carries, it's like, what are you going to do? This game is going to go to 30 plus minutes. I'm going to have Manta Conda, like maybe a Vlad's first item. I'm going to have like some combo of items. I'm going to reach the point, and we're going to play Dota, late game Dota. And of the other best carries, many of them won't beat a Morphling. Drow is up there, ban her out, right? That kind of thing. So Morph is actually, weirdly, a very safe pick right now, pretty early in the draft. TA, very strong laner. You can flex her mid, but she's mostly a carry nowadays. She's pretty good against many of these melee offlaners that are popular right now. So she's pretty good. I don't know. She's not so broken, I feel. For certain players, a very good pairing. You'll see TA banned out against those guys. For a lot of it, it's just like, she's good enough. She's left in, and she kind of fits a similar tempo, right? It's like, oh, I wanted to pick Bristle, Alk, Dragonite, Monkey King, Magnus, whatever, for my very fast tempo, come online early carry. I mean, TA does that. And so does Gyro. Gyro's another top tier first phase pick. You can move him to position 4. That one's acceptable, but not super popular. Many people just run it as carry because like, I press flak, I shoot out the lane, I farm the hard camp. Like, you can't stop me. There's not an offlaner who really deals with that, especially once you pair him with a strong position 5. So Gyro, super safe. Online early, not bad late scaling. So if you have to reveal a core early, Gyro has been very stable. He's also strong in the lane, potentially, with Afterburner. But if it's not a good lane for that, like you're against a Clockwork, you'll get Flame Break knocked away, whatever, then you just go secondary strikes, focus on farming with Flat Cannon, then contribute to the fights with secondary strikes, or like, you know, everything. But secondary strikes will then help you there as well. So Spectre is not as popular, but she does, if you get a good draft going, then it kind of works. It's still a little exploratory, I would say, hit or miss sometimes, but good enough that I would put her up here. I'm seeing it more and more. Drow, only against certain carries, I would say. Like Morphling, you'll see her as a response to, or when there's been a lot of carry bans and it's like, I guess a Drow, you know, especially if the team takes Medusa. Like Medusa might deserve to be higher up. A lot of times when the other carries all get banned out, many teams like Medusa, especially if they let Doom through the draft, Medusa is their counter pick because she has the tiniest of health pools and doesn't care about the anti-healing because she's all about mana shield. But then to potentially counter that, and mana burn is not very common right now. EMP is probably banned out. Anti-mage will get banned out. Diffusal's not the greatest right now. The other way to deal with it is high physical damage. Preferably not negative armor, but maybe to some degree is fine. Mostly just physical burst to go through it. Then that's where you'll see heroes like TA or Drow who can outrange Medusa. I've been seeing more PA picks. Same deal against the Medusa. The break is also very good versus some of these heroes like the Bristleback. The lane's okay, especially Beastmaster's been so popular, and PA has a very good lane matchup against Beastmaster. So we've been seeing more of that as well. Terrorblade, again, like when a lot of the other stuff is banned, I feel like he's one of the go-tos for many teams. There's other carries that get picked. I don't have everything on this list, and I'm not going to try to talk through every single carry right now. But yeah, that's kind of, these are the major carries, I think. Mids. So after these mids are banned out, if you need something safe, Tiny's not bad. It's classic Tiny. You know, you do what you need to, but you do have to be careful because if you need your mid to be active, it takes a while to get to Blink. That's one of the downsides of Tiny. So you see him more as a counter pick where you don't necessarily have to shut down the enemy, but you're hoping to pick up a CS lead to slow them down. For example, they went Storm. You're hoping to slow down his level 6 and then make your way to a Blink decently early. And then once you have your Blink Avalanche Toss is going to be really good for your team. But that's the weakness for a lot of his certain matchups. Like if he has to be the initiator and then he's having a bad game. Earthshaker's been really popular as a mid. Totem's really good. Slugger for casual harass. Get to the Blink, Ags, all that stuff. Just tons of initiating. solid matchups versus many of the other melee heroes. But if there's one you don't like, you ban it out. We're seeing more Ember, just needs level 6 and he can do things. Especially because many of these, like with Monkey King out of the pool, some of these other ones, Invoker out of the pool, this is where some of their worst matchups are out, so they're back. A lot of us are seeing Lena in pubs. I don't see her as much in the pro scene because I think they have a better way of dealing with it, but she is a pretty safe pick. If you have to reveal your mid first, you're like, I don't want my mid to get countered too hard, Lena. But she's not going to initiate for you, so you hopefully have it from somewhere else, like one of your supports, your offlane, something like that. Puck, we don't see as much after the nerfs. Sometimes you'll see like Pango, Timber, Primal in the mid lane, like the Razors in the right matchups, but I'd say they're more counter picks nowadays, or because they got flexed in. Huskar, very good versus some of these heroes, so if you really want to shut it down and you want to cheese them, you'll see that if you have the last pick. Sniper, I actually don't see Sniper as much. Maybe I'll take him off, but sometimes as a counter pick as well. I would say Shaker 4 is more alive than Tiny 4, but both of them are not very popular. Most people are playing core versions of Shaker and Tiny. Couple players doing Shaker carry. I don't know if I like that as much. I haven't seen enough of it to form a full opinion, but the totem damage with Slugger is really solid right now. Terrorblade position 3 is still a thing for only a few teams, especially if you pick it early and you want to flex it, but it has dropped off a bunch since it was first discovered. Does that break from Silver Edge, or they have an ability that breaks? Of the heroes on here, Nyx with Shard has a break, PA with Shard, Primal Beast with Ags. There's probably another somewhere in here that I'm forgetting. Oh, Shadow Demon with Ags, Hoodwink ult. So if you need a break, like some of those are all really solid to go for. The offlaners, I am the least... like, there's not an offlaner besides these top 3, right? Like Magnus, Doom, Beastmaster, and we can throw Bristle in there. Those are, like, the best to me. And then Dawnbreaker's really good for certain teams. The Global's really nice. Kill combo with many of these strong supports. After that, it feels like you figure out what you want from your offlaner and you go for that. If you're trying to counter pick, you'll see things like, you know, like the Timbers, the Enigmas. If you're doing like a very safe pick, you're not sure what you're playing into, you see things like Mars and all that. Got a good matchup, maybe doing Visage, Aura Builder, you know, something like Underlord. I'm the least confident about the best offlaners, and that might be because there's a big, they're the best, and then there's a big chunk in the middle, and it comes down to the team of what they like. What else? Yeah, some counter picks can be like Lycan and Slardar. They're not very common, but against the right heroes, you might see them. Same with the Terrorblade. He's worse, but he's good enough that I keep him on here to remember about him. Supports, what else do we have to talk about? We kind of covered a lot of these. Naga's not as good as she used to be. Chen, only certain teams do it, but if they do, it's the same as usual. ET, I haven't been seeing as much. I think he got nerfed a little bit, and he just fell off in favor of many of these other ones. We talked about it a little out of order, but Crystal Maiden is still really strong. Very stable lane matchup, contributes a lot. Look how many mobile heroes there are, and then you level Frostbite first. And another, so for her and many of these supports, you have to consider the shard for the Tormentor, right? The pro teams are actually going to do Aghanim Shard really quickly. So for a lot of these supports, it is very good if you have a good shard. There's a couple of here that aren't so good. So like Muerta, Batrider, Pugnas, theirs are not as good. That just shows how strong those heroes are. That it's, we'll just take the coin flip on whether we get it or not, but what they do is good enough. But many of these other strong supports really benefit from the shard. Crystal Clone plus Frostbite is so much early lockdown versus many of these mobile heroes, or Disarms versus many of these early right-clicking carries. Enchant is a very strong hero to pair with these guys, or to kind of fight against it. Like that Dragon Knight's running at me, I need my support to be strong and be ready to go early on. So many of these supports just kind of like fit that bill. Pugna and Muerta are kind of cool because Decrepify or Pierce the Veil, both of them protect you from a lot of these early physical damage heroes. In the case of Pugna, he can save his allies, and he can also speed up the tempo, the usual support Pugna way that we all know about. Maybe we don't love it, but that's, you know, he does what he does. He still kind of does that. Marcy offlane, some people will do it. Not everyone, but some people like it. I think that's all about I have to say for most of these heroes. Oh, Sanj and Yasha. So let's talk about that briefly. I've noticed a resurgence in Sanj and Yasha lately. I can't say I'm fully sure why because I'm not a core player. My understanding of it from what I've seen is that the status resistance is really good for these early fights because look at these heroes. There are so many types of stuns and silences. Less silences, mostly stuns. There's a couple heroes that are BKB piercers as well, like Batrider, Beastmaster, Doom, Magnus. So you don't... If you're looking to fight early and you have to deal with all these stuns, you kind of need the BKB early. But then the BKB early could be countered by these BKB piercing abilities. So Sanj and Yasha is a nicer buildup for many of these carry type heroes. They don't have to be worried about using BKB charges too soon. And it works versus all these stuns and silences. But then also these BKB piercing ones, you just reduce the time Lasso affects you, that the Roar affects you. And because there's so many stuns right now, you could be chain stunned. But one, if you only have the Sanj and Yasha, it's harder to be chain stunned because you have the 25% status resistance. But then there's also a chance you will be able to pop your BKB as required. And maybe you then get roared, whatever. But you'll reduce that roar and then you'll still have BKB going and you can do something. So Sanj and Yasha, I think, has fit this early fighting while dealing with the mass amount of crowd control that's in the game right now. What else? I think that's mostly everything I want to talk about. Veno jungle, I think is we kind of talked about earlier, but to repeat it, think it could work. You need a very tailored draft for it. I don't really think it's worth trying in pubs. I don't think very many offlaners know how to play it. If you play in a party, though, I do think it could be worth doing because many players don't know how to stop a jungler and a solo offlaner. So if the solo offlaner and the Veno jungle learn what to do and how to set themselves up for success, then you can run that in pubs, and I think you'd get away with it. I think those were everything I kind of wanted to talk about. Is there anything you guys, any questions on the meta? I know we kind of did it throughout, but anything we missed? Anything you're interested in? For this type of content in the future, I was thinking, I don't know if we'll do it in this video, but after talking about all this pro meta, I could show a couple drafts, talk through it to explain like how it goes. And maybe we will do that actually in a second here. But first, we'll see if you guys have any questions. Is this the smallest relevant carry pool ever? No, I would actually say the start of 7.37E, the Gleipnir meta, that was actually smaller because it was a very specific subset of Gleipnir ranged carries like Luna and Windranger. They were the best. Nature's Prophet, you know? I think that was actually smaller. This is a little bigger than that. What hero do you think should be in this list but is never picked? We briefly talked about Undying earlier. I'm a little surprised we don't see more of him. I think it's interesting how someone like Nature's mostly dead, but then a top team will pick him like Liquid, you know, in the right game. We see that more nowadays. We're getting to the point where the meta matters, but many teams are pulling out these heroes that aren't on this list at all, but they just have a player who's really good at it. They understand what they're trying to get out of the hero. It fits the game. I like that. Some unusual but strong picks builds I can catch the enemy by surprise with. Has it all been done by now? No, we get new ideas and builds all the time, especially with the patches. For your pubs, I mean, if you did any of this stuff in your pubs, many pubs don't follow the pro meta at all. So just doing any of these established builds would kind of be a surprise. What's a good pub hero that doesn't apply? For supports, things like Warlock and Witch Doctor, eternally good in pub games, right? But you don't really see them in the pro scene. That's not going to catch anyone off guard. At this point, everyone in the pub scene knows about Warlock and Witch Doctor, but it's still good, still does it. Nah, I don't think DK's low skill. You need really good last hitting. You need to be good in the lane with Dragon Knight and then you need to push yourself to be active early. Now in pub games, maybe that's not as true, but I think in the pro scene, that's the cool thing about him. It's kind of like life stealer, you know, win your lane, do good things. But I will admit, Dragon Knight, for as strong as he is in the early game, scales a little too hard. That's why he's so popular. Because trying to pick out like what is the weak point of Dragon Knight, I don't know. Like that's why he's in that top tier bands. Abaddon 5, super good in pubs. Don't see him as much in the pro level because people can play around the shield too well in the laning stage, and he's not as strong as many of these heroes. And although the save with the shield is good, it's like, well, you could be Shadow Demon. You know, your save is similar. You have a better presence in the lane, and you can double stack. And when you match up, like you pick Abaddon, they pick Shadow Demon, you pop your ult and he disrupts you. Or like he disrupts someone and you want to save him and you can't, you know, because your shield doesn't work. Or you try to walk in and there's like the silence from Muerta. So you pop your ult and then another ghost hits you. Many of these heroes just have better interactions than Abaddon. He's a very pub hero. Core Abaddon sees more play at the pro level, especially South American teams like Abaddon carry. Not that he's the top of the meta, but if you're going to see a core Abaddon, it's probably out of an SA team. Which of these top 2 heroes are dangerous picks for pubs because they need good team coordination to work? Good question. I would say Naga is very risky to run in pubs if the ranks aren't high, because she's very tricky with Song. You can grief your team very easily. She also needs a very greedy playstyle, which many pubs don't have. It's extremely passive. From the cores, many of them are quite safe. You maybe aren't picking some of them early, but you're never as... Like, you pick Spectre first pick. They need to go for a very early draft, ideally, to counter you and beat you in the lane, and they don't do that. They pick, like, another carry off lane. It's like, okay, you know. Terrorblade offlane, he's another one. I would be very careful about doing that in pubs. Batrider, I do think, is a little tricky in pub games because you do need to be pretty greedy to make Batrider support work. That means your core needs to know how to be careful while you're gone. You know, does that happen? But yeah, they might throw to start, but then you have Blink Lasso, and that's a classic. And you catch people off guard, lasso, force-staff them out of position, get back into it because they dove, and you do that and you get a kill. You know, it kind of works out. I'm kind of okay with that one. SF dropped off after they nerfed, what's it called? Lasting Presence, something like that. The one where his right-clicking build where he builds up souls. They nerfed the amount of damage he gets from that, so it's not as popular anymore. Sometimes if a lot of the carries are banned out, you might see SF come in, and especially if he is good in the lane versus some of these melee heroes, because you can stack raises, sometimes you will see it, but he's no longer in that first phase pick that he used to be. Tidehunter does have some good matchups, especially as several offlaners are banned out. You can pick Tide to bully in the lane, be strong on his own if your 4 needs to go roam around a lot or maybe wants to farm up a lot, like the Batrider. But Tidehunter, his ultimate is just a little too long cooldown, I would say. There's many low cooldown heroes here. You will still see him sometimes, but he's usually not like top of the line preference. His shard does help to cover that weakness, and it's pretty good versus many of these heroes. One carry that should maybe be here that isn't is Slark. Seeing a little bit more Slark picks nowadays. Hold on. Seeing more Slark picks nowadays. I think he's one of the few Diffusal builders left. Mage Slayer, not bad either. Decent matchups against several of these offlaners. For example, the Tidehunter you mentioned. The Dispel, pretty good against many of the supports. So seeing more Slark than I used to. Why is Rubik not meta? He got enough nerfs that his laning stage is not as strong. That's kind of the main reason, I would say. There's a decent amount of good spells to steal. like Magnus, for example. Rubik is a classic counter to Magnus, but you need to make it to that point. And when you have your Rubik position 4 and they have Muerta, Phoenix, Batrider, Nyx, Dark Willow, like these have much stronger combos to come out of the lane early. And Rubik, Telekinesis does no damage. Fate Bolt, and then the damage reduction off of that into the right-click trade is how he used to be good enough in the lane. And then you like Telekinesis lift people into the combo to be worth it. But right now, many of these offlaners want stronger position 4s than what Rubik can offer right now. Thoughts on Lycan position 1 Alpha Wolves facet with Midas? I haven't seen it enough. I do think Alpha Wolves is really good. I don't know if you need to be a position 1 for it. Like I've seen position 3 Lycan seem pretty decent. I saw mid Lycan in a game before. It's been a while since I saw that one. I don't know its best role, but I do think Alpha Wolves is good. Zeus, okay, Zeus support. If a few more teams start running it, I'm willing to put it on here because right now it feels like just a couple teams do Zeus support. But in the right situations, it does look pretty good. Bloodseeker carry, I'd say same thing. I do see it. We could probably make a case for putting him somewhere down here. We could add it in if we want. But it only comes down after you know you have a good matchup, all of that. Like he's a later pick into it. I can add him in. I don't care if there's more on this list or not. So it's fine with me. Zeus I stand by as maybe that's the thing with Bloodseeker as well. Bloodseeker and Zeus are both niche enough that I feel only some teams do it. Bloodseeker more common than Zeus, so I'll throw him on here. But yeah, that's my logic. Brood, I have not seen as much, but I haven't been covering Western Europe, and I feel like Western Europe and to a certain extent Eastern Europe have the most Brood players. So maybe it's still good, and I just haven't caught those games. I think it's been nerfed enough that it's more of a cheese pick, and especially if you look at many of these top heroes, you're trying to play Brood Mother. The lane has always been, okay, we got to get to level 6. A lot of strong laners here. Okay, we're level 6. We're now going to pop off. I'm going to farm like crazy. Anyone who comes to the lane is dead. Look at these heroes. Who are you kicking out? Does the Bristle Carry care? You're giving gold to Alchemist. He's got the facet. Monkey King is like one-shotting the spiders. Flat cannons, shard, or whatever the split thing is. I don't know why I'm blanking so hard on it right now. A lot of these heroes just don't care about Broodmother as much as you would like. Psyblades, yeah.